Okay, this is a dream that I had on November 25th, 2020. And it's a weird one, but I believe that it's prophetic, speaking as to the spiritual condition and the things of the time, and God giving that directly to me. I was in a dome, a large metal dome. The floors and the walls and the ceilings were of a polished, like dark ocean blue. And they weren't like polished, like mirror finish, but sort of a dulled finish. I can remember looking up at the walls, and the height of the dome was roughly around 200 feet high. And I was in the center of it, along with other people that I was working with, to try and train a group of people that were already there. And they came from all walks of life, rich, poor, young, old, all across the world. And they were in there. We were trying to train them to compress. Now, I work at a tank, which means I work in a pressurized environment at times. And when you compress, one of the ways in which you can get your ears to pop is to hold your nose and blow a little bit so that your ears will pop. We were trying to train these people, and I can remember thinking we were rushed. We were in a panic state trying to get this done quickly, because if they didn't know what to do, it was going to be very painful for them. Ruptured eardrum and such. I remember looking around at the dome, and I can remember the walls were thick, several feet thick, of like titanium. In fact, it was like a titanium blue. Anyway, the walls were several feet thick. From slightly below head level on up, stretching up about 6 feet, was glass all the way around the circumference of the dome. At the front of the dome, as I was facing it, were two large doors, roughly about 50 to 75 feet high and just as wide, and they were double doors split down the middle. Off to the left of the doors, where I was looking, was like a control room. It was quartered off. Opposite of the control room on the other side of the dome, and the dome circumference on the inside was probably around 400 feet from end to end. Off to the opposite side of the control room was a cordoned off area where I didn't see, but I got the impression it was like rooms and storage areas and things like that, very bare bones. We were trying to train these people, and you couldn't keep their attention. Me and several others, not very many, we couldn't keep their attention. We tried to train them how to compress, what to expect, and all that stuff, and they weren't listening. But for me, it was this one older lady. She was in her 70s, had like a gray scarf around her top of her head where a portion of her hair and her face was showing. She was wearing a dark overcoat with a great big cashmere bag full of stuff, and she was just laughing, and it wasn't serious or anything like that. And I was trying to tell her, I said, listen, if you don't learn how to do this, it's going to be painful for you. And she just laughed it off and was wandering around. Along with everyone else, they were wandering around. The other people that I was working with were having the same problems. And so I finally got so frustrated because it was nearing the end where we had to train them and compress. And I finally just said, okay, you're on your own. You're on your own. And so I went to the windows and looked out the windows, and that was whenever I noticed around the circumference of the sphere, like I said, all the windows were there, but like if you're facing the doors, the double doors, at the 1 o'clock position was like you could see out to all the different regions of the world. So like 1 o'clock position was Africa, 2 o'clock position was Australia, and so forth and so on. You could see all of them. And I remember looking out there and seeing like the cities and all of that stuff, and I could see massive amounts of people. Now there were still people, but they were transformed and disfigured. They looked like people, but they had locust qualities. Like their hind legs were crooked, like the hind end of a locust legs, and they were on all fours. And I can remember thinking that these were like the Antifa people, the BLM, the socialists. I mean, these were the radicals, and they were all wanting to get into the dome. So I tried, after I saw that, I went back to the lady, tried to find her, tried to tell her, look, you got to listen to me. She still wasn't having any part of it. So me and the other people that were working to train these people and safeguard these people, we cracked open the double doors and we went out and we were trying to fight off these things. Now, whenever I went outside, I got an aerial view of the dome. And the dome was on top of a hill, and the hill was lush with green and had some rocky patches and things like that, but it's very high. And I remember the dome, it was going up like this, and then it made a little dip, and then it went up into another little dome. And it was polished blue. It was seamless, with the exception of you could see the glass around, which the glass was several feet thick too. It wasn't just little bitty glass, and the double doors. And I remember we were trying to fight off these locust people things, but the numbers were too many. And so call them back in. Got to go back in. We got to get ready. Went back in the dorms, sealed the dorms, and I can remember all throughout the time where I was, from the time the dream was starting to that point when we went back in, there was pounding on the walls. Now, the walls were so thick, they were several feet thick of solid titanium or whatever the metal was, very strong, but I could hear the pounding, which meant that they had incredible strength, these things that were pounding on the walls. And they were pounding all throughout. It kept getting louder and louder. When we came back in, after we had tried to fight them off, we went back in the dome, shut the doors, 2 double doors, and the pounding was loud. And then all of a sudden, I looked at the 1 o'clock position where the windows were, and this was like the Africa position. From the rocks, these 2 things jumped up to the windows. And that was like a 75-foot jump from the rock to the top of the window. And they were pounding and pounding and pounding on the window. And the window was holding up, but you could see it was starting to crack. And then all of a sudden, a pound, and the window crashed, and these things came in, and I woke up. Now, I honestly think that this is a prophetic thing that God has given to me personally, but I'm going to go ahead and share it with you. I believe that that's sort of the spiritual times of where we're in right now. We are trying, those that are with God and those that are Christians are trying to get people ready for what's coming up, and they're not listening. Their attention's scattered all over the place, and the danger that is coming in is starting to come out. Now, as far as the dome, that's like a safety area. We're trying to get them to safety, trying to get them ready, because compression, when you're going down in depth, your body goes through changes both internally and externally. We're trying to get them ready for the changes that are about to occur. And they weren't having it, and us trying to fight them off, but it's just too great to all that. And then finally comes to a time where we shut the door, and that sort of reminds me of Noah. Noah built the ark for 100 years, and then God shut the door, and the doors were shut. Actually, we didn't shut them. The doors were just shutting on their own. But I wanted to get that out there. It left me very disturbed. I think that the people that were still human beings, but they adopted more animal qualities and were more hyper violent. That was the thing that bothered me. And on top of it, the one lady that I was working with, the older lady, who just flagged it off and thought it was dumb. I think that really bothered me the most. But in any case, I wanted to get this down before I forget. So, yeah.